Hello and welcome to the Somerset Archaeological and Natural History Society, which is usually known as SANHS. My name's Lizzie Induni and I'm the chair of SANHS. This evening, Laura Beckwith will be talking about the Portable Antiquities scheme known as PASS. Laura has had many years' experience both in archaeology and museums. She began her archaeological journey as a graduate from the University of York. After about a decade working in non-archaeological roles, she decided it was time to begin her archaeological career. She began volunteering with the RAM Museum and Sidmouth Museum and has been Sidmouth's curator for archaeology for the last 5 years. She worked for the National Trust at Knightshays and then AC Archaeology in Devon. Laura is now employed as the Somerset Finds Liaison Officer, a scheme to identify objects found by members of the public. Her main role is to identify and record these objects through the Portable Antiquities scheme, otherwise known as PASS. The aim is anyone finding old objects can offer their finds for recording through PASS. This allows the archaeological knowledge to be preserved and available for anyone doing research. Most of the finders are metal detectorists. However, there's a whole range of objects recorders, and this talk will run through some of the highlights from the last couple of years. As usual, Laura will take questions at the end of the talk, and again, as usual, please activate the chat button and use that to ask a question. Because we're recording this webinar, it will go onto YouTube, so we won't name names in the questions. It's free to register for the talk, but a donation of £5 towards the ongoing costs of SANHS would be greatly appreciated. The donations button is on the SANHS website donations page. When donating, please label your donation PAS. To make things easier, a link to the donations page will also be posted in the chat button at the end of the lecture. So, over to Laura.
Thank you, Lizzie. I'm just showing my screen. There we go. Okay, so welcome to the talk. So my name's Laura Beckwith, and as Lizzie has said, I am the Finds Liaison Officer for Somerset. So I haven't always been the Finds Liaison Officer. I started my career as a digger for AC Archaeology based in Devon. And in this role, I dug over quite a few different sites all across the southwest. So there was quite a few sites I did up in Gloucestershire, quite a few in Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, and Dorset as well. The picture on the left there is me digging a grave, which was on the outskirts of Exeter, and it was a Roman grave. So basically, Devon soil is so acidic that there was no bones left within the soil. So we've just got the remains of the shoes, the hobnails, in the grave there, which you can just about see, which I thought was really exciting. So that was one of my my highlights from my digging career. In the middle is just a photo from when I've done talks with Sidmouth Museum. So I'm the curator of archaeology there as well, which is a volunteer role. But I've done talks at various different hill forts. This was at Sidbury Castle. And on the right there is another photo of me digging. So this is from recently, actually, when I went to go and dig a hoard site. So I am in the office these days, but I do get to go out occasionally and get my hands dirty. So I did enjoy myself then. We didn't actually find anything else, but it was nice to go out there and get back in the dirt again. So now in my current role as Finds Liaison Officer, for the Portable Antiquities scheme. For those of you who don't know what it is or haven't heard of it, so it was a scheme set up by the British Museum. There's about 50 flows across the country, so we have one flow per county, sorry, more or less. There are a few in Wales, and we do have a few in places like Norfolk, where we do have a lot of finds coming in. But I'm the only Finds Liaison Officer for Somerset. So I have about 100 finders a year. Generally, they are metal detectorists, but we also get people who are, say, dog walkers or people out for a walk who might find something, and you want to know what it is. It also means that we have a record of archaeological objects that aren't found in excavation. So this is knowledge that would otherwise be lost. So it's a really important scheme. It's been going for about 20 years now. And we also have the Treasure Act in there as well, which I will talk about later. So the majority of our finds are generally Roman. This is a sort of a trend that you see across the whole of England, is that you have a very high proportion of Roman material and also post-medieval material. I've created this chart here, which is the finds from 2024 to 2025. This is just showing you the difference between the counties in the southwest. So we've got Cornwall there, Devon, Dorset, and Somerset. And as you can see, Somerset has a very high percentage of Roman finds. And in the sort of the further southwest you go, so down to Cornwall, there's a considerable lack of Roman finds there, but there's more prehistoric finds. So it does follow the trend for the national picture as well, as in we have a lot of Roman and post-medieval, but we have a drop-off of medieval finds, and we also don't have that many early medieval finds. So the reasons for this is probably based on the biases of how things are recorded. So you've got to consider that if our finders are metal detectorists, there's only certain areas of the country that they are allowed to detect on. And if you have counties that have a lot of protected land, that is not suitable for detecting. So you're going to have a bit of a skew there. We also have a lot more cultivated land in this area of the country, so we tend to have a lot more rural sites coming up, and that's where you do get a lot of Roman finds. And we also had a high proportion of Roman military campaigns coming over here for establishing cities such as Exeter, and when they went up to Cardiff way as well. So you do get a lot of, you've got the Fosse way, you've got a lot of Roman early period activity going on, and that really shows up in the data here as well. So this slide is showing you, this is specifically for Somerset, the proportion of finds per 2024 and 2025 as per period again. So this is just showing really that we've got a lot of Roman material. So it would be nice to get more early medieval material coming up. We do know that there was early medieval activity in the area, but perhaps because of the way things are preserved or the way that archaeology is recovered, it just means that we're not seeing as much of that material. And we do tend to find that the structures such as villas and sort of anything to do with towns and things like that, where layers are built up, you're going to lose the older material, and anything that was a lot more established, like the Roman villas, that's the sort of stuff you're still going to see. So it's just kind of highlighting that there. And this is just giving you an idea of what kind of objects we see as well. So this is the objects recorded by type. We've got a lot of coins. So the majority of that is 1,171 coins were recorded. This is 2024 and 2025. Obviously, there is a bias here towards metal objects. As we said, the majority of finds are metal detectorists. So we don't see that many non-metal objects. However, the level of vessel sherds, pottery sherds, that is increasing. I'm going to take credit for that because since I've been in post, I have been asking my finders to bring me pottery because I love pottery. So it's actually nice to see that number increasing there, and we're getting a higher percentage of Roman pottery, post-medieval pottery, and medieval pottery as well. So we're kind of balancing out the coin finds, but obviously coin losses are quite prolific. And you can see we also have a lot of buckles, brooches, pieces of flint, so that's Stone Age objects, things like that, and a lot of tokens as well. So I'm going to run through some highlights from 2024 and 2025, all finds from Somerset. So some of these have been recorded in other counties, but every object was found in Somerset. So the first object that I wanted to show you today is this beautiful Paleolithic hand axe. So this dates from around 500,000 to 250,000 BC. This is very, very old. It's a really lovely object. It's got this beautiful orange patina to it, which is probably a result of iron staining. It's had a bit of a knock. You can see it's been bashed around a bit. The chances are it was probably napped somewhere and then it might have been deposited and moved with glacial tides, as it were. So that's why it looks quite it's been in the wars a bit, but it's got this really lovely shape to it, which is quite typical of an Apulian hand axe. So that's a certain type named from where they were first found in France. And you can see around the edges of it that it's been retouched so that it's quite sharp. And the archaeologists like to say that this is a sort of Stone Age Swiss Army knife, so it would have been used for all sorts of things. And there's just a picture there on the side that I've included showing how these were napped from a larger flint nodule. So it would have taken a good bit of time to make these. And I also like to highlight that these sort of objects give you a bit more of an idea into what society was like for people. People would have sat there maybe teaching each other how to make these. You can imagine a father or a mother teaching their child how to make these. So there's a level of planning, technology, communication in these objects. So they're not just rocks, as my partner would say. They're actually really interesting objects, and I just think they're really beautiful as well. So it was really nice to have this. We do see a lot of these come up in Devon, but not so much in Somerset. And so it was a really nice object for me to have and record. So then into the Mesolithic period. So this is the Middle Stone Age period. So this is the period when, as we usually look at it in archaeology, it's seen as when people were very nomadic. So all of the flint tools and objects that are associated with this period are generally very small, very lightweight. And this is sort of indicating that people were not wanting to carry around big, heavy lumps of flint or anything like that. So they were really well using their objects. So these cores that we see from the Mesolithic period are generally very small. So this object here is a blade core. That just means that the type of flint flakes that were napped off of it were very, very narrow. And you can see the flake scars. I would have a pointer, but I don't know how to show you. But you can see the flake scars, the sort of the ridges running down the core there, showing you where these blades would have been napped off of the core. So this is a single platform core. It would have been created from a larger flint nodule, and then they would have napped off a big chunk of the top of it to create this platform, this working area, and then they would nap down each side to create their blades. The blades would then be used for all sorts of different things. They might have been worked into different tools, just used for cutting. We don't really know exactly what they were all used for, but we can get an idea from experimental archaeology. And there's just a picture on the side there just showing you an example of these blades coming from the blade core. So this one specifically dates to the Mesolithic to early Neolithic period, which is around 10,000 to 3,500 BC. So it's a very nice piece. And also, if you can imagine holding that in your hand, it had actually quite a nice ergonomic design to it, which was really quite nice. So then I wanted to show some finds from the Neolithic period. So this is the New Stone Age, dating to around 4,000 to 2,350 BC. So at this period, this is the advent of farming. So we see an influx in people coming from Europe, bringing farming with them. There's also a huge range of tools, flint tools, stone tools that we start seeing in this period as well, including axe heads and chisels. These two examples here are similar looking objects, but the object on the right is a lot smaller. So we recorded it as an axe head or chisel. It was very, very narrow for an axe head, so that's why we think it may be a chisel instead. But these are made in the same sort of way. They're made from a larger flint nodule that's been shaped into this sort of oval shape, and then napped with flake removals to create cutting edges, and some of them are polished or ground as well. The object on the left is probably a rough out, which means it may have been used as either a practice object, maybe it wasn't quite finished. There's parts of it that look like they've been removed by accident, or perhaps there was a mistake when they were being napped. So they've possibly just been discarded because of that. That's also an idea with rough outs. We don't always know exactly what the story is behind them. But we know that they would have been facilitated to, they would have been hafted onto a handle. I've got an example there on the right, just showing you how they would have been used, so that you could use them as an axe to chop down your trees or whatever it was that you needed in that period. And obviously there was, as I said, there was farming in this period, so there was a lot of tree clearing, cutting down trees. So that's why we see a lot of axe heads in this period. This is just a couple more objects from the Neolithic period as well. So on the left here, we've got this axe hammer. So this is actually made from stone. It's incomplete. You can see an example down on the bottom there showing you what it would have looked like originally. But this one obviously is broken. We think it was probably broken before it was deposited, perhaps. It doesn't show much signs of use. It's quite rounded, but we can't really see any use wear on it necessarily, so it's hard to tell if it was used in a ritual sense or if it was properly used as an object. But it's quite an interesting one because we don't often see many of them on the database at all. They are obviously stone objects, so they might not be as obvious to finders. If you're walking or something like that, you might not necessarily recognize it as an object, or it could just be that they don't really show up that much in the archaeological record. It's hard to tell, but either way, we don't see many of them in Somerset, so that's why I've got this one down in the presentation today. And then the other object there is a really beautiful scraper. So a scraper is an object that was created pretty much throughout the entirety of the Stone Age period. So you see scrapers being made in the Paleolithic period right up until the early Bronze Age. So they're not really an object that you can use to date that well. However, this one we expect was probably made in the Neolithic period. And this is based on the fact that there is some cortex remaining on the on one face there. The cortex is just the sort of outer skin of the flint nodule, so that's surviving there. And it's also got this lovely circular shape, and it's got some really nice obvious retouch running around the edge there. So all these things point towards it being made in the Neolithic period, which is, as I said before, when we had a lot of different tool types appearing. So there was a lot more development of the technology of flint knapping. So it's a really nice object, and it's got this beautiful honey-coloured flint as well, which I just thought was lovely. So now into the Bronze Age period. So we see a lot of metal finds from the Bronze Age period. One of the most common objects that we see is a palstave, which is what I've got here. So this dates specifically to the Middle Bronze Age. So in terms of Bronze Age metalworking technologies, you begin with flat axes, which sort of look like, if you chop this palstave in half and just have the blade end, that's pretty much what a flat axe looks like. And then they realized that if they created this sort of socket edge to it, it actually makes the palstave axe a lot stronger. So this has now got a stop bridge, flanges, and a loop as well. So it attaches into the handle a lot better. It makes it a lot more substantial. And having a loop on a palstave is actually a southwestern type. So it's something that we only see produced in the southwest, which is really interesting. And I actually recorded an object a couple of years ago, which had two loops on it, which was never seen before, apparently. So that was quite interesting. So yes, these would have been used for cutting things, all sorts. I've just included a nice picture there of a bloke with an axe because I just thought, why not? It's funny. Don't know if that's really what they would have looked like, but we like to include those things. This is another object from the Bronze Age. This is a hammer. So it's a socketed hammer. You can see it's been quite well used. I thought this was a really lovely object because you've actually got decoration surviving there on one edge. You can just see this sort of chevron design on the face of it there. And you can see the casting seam as well where it's been cast. So it's a really nice example of a Bronze Age hammer. And this dates to the late Bronze Age, around 1000 to 700 BC. So in the Iron Age, we actually don't see metal finds in the Iron Age until roughly about halfway through the period. So I just wanted to include this object because this is actually quite an interesting one. It's a socketed axe, so it's very similar to the ones you see in the Bronze Age, except it's made of iron, which you can really highlight that this is sort of on the cusp, the transition between the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. So it's actually a really significant find. It's not in particularly good condition. Obviously, iron does corrode quite badly, but you can see there that it's similar to the other socketed objects, and it would have probably had a loop on it as well. And then I've got some pottery sherds because we really rarely see pottery sherds dating to this period. So I thought those were really, really nice to have. They're similar to black burnished ware, which is the sort of normal, well, it's the most common type of pottery that we see around this area for the Roman period, but you do get black burnished ware beginning in the Iron Age period as well. So it's quite similar to that. It's quite micaceous. It's got these little glittery inclusions, and it's got a very dark fabric, which is usually down to the levels of oxygen when they were being fired. So that's just quite a nice one to have on there. And then a object from the Iron Age that I just really wanted to include is this lovely gold stator. So this is dated to around 30 AD. The reason we can date it so clearly is because it's actually got what was probably the last, I just have to check my notes because I've written it down, but he's what they think was the last ruler of the Induni tribe before the Romans invaded. So it actually has Isu's name stamped on there. You can just see EISU above the horse. So that's really quite nice because we can get a specific date because he actually ruled in 30 AD. And I've just got a little image there showing you what life may have been like in an Iron Age settlement, because I do like to have the visual aids. And here are some lovely objects from the late Iron Age period as well. So this is two examples of glass beads. So glass beads are really lovely, but they're always quite hard to date. Fortunately, on the left here, we've got one that has this lovely swirling motif, which is quite it's quite typical of Iron Age beads. So you see a lot of these from the Glastonbury Lake Village excavations. They come in all sorts of colours, but they are usually blue. But this has got the little swirling white motif on the edges there. Unfortunately, it's not complete, but it is still a really nice example. And on the right, we've got another blue glass bead, which, because we don't have any decoration on it, it was a bit harder to date. So it's got quite a broad date range of Iron Age to early medieval. But it's still, because it's quite irregular, the shape of it is almost like a donut. It is still likely to be from the later Iron Age, early Roman period. So I've just got another piece of pottery here. So this is a nice example of some Samian ware. So this dates to the 1st to 2nd century, the Roman period. So Samian ware is your sort of fancy tableware in the Roman period. It was imported from Gaul in France. So they originally started producing this around 40 AD in the south of Gaul. And then as it got more and more popular, they created new workshops in central Gaul and then further up country as well. And you can see a change in how the pottery looks. There's different levels of inclusions, different colours to the pottery, and also different decorational styles as well. So that's why we can identify this one as being from southern Gaul because of the decoration style there. So it was not really clear which way up the sherd goes. It looks like it's got this foliate style design, and it's very similar to one that's been described as Form 29, which I've included a picture of there on the right to give you an idea of what it may have looked like. probably came from a bowl or a dish or something like that. But it's just a really nice piece. We don't often get them with decoration on as well. So another Roman find we've got here. This is quite an interesting one. I was stumped when I first saw it. The patination suggested it was quite old, but I had no idea what I was looking at originally. But it's actually part of a cosmetic mortar kit. So this is the lower part. As you can see there, that picture is from the British Museum collection, giving you an idea of something similar that it may have looked like. We don't know if it would have had that sort of zoomorphic design or not. But it's a really interesting piece, and it probably dates to the 1st to 2nd century. So I've just got that in there, even though it does look like a random bit of metal, but yeah, it's a really interesting one. And another piece dating to similar periods. So this is again sort of 1st to 2nd century Roman period. This is a terret ring. So this would have been attached to a horse harness or a yoke to guide the reins, stop them from being tangled. So this is actually a skirted terret ring, which is like the example I've got on the right there. You do see these a lot in Iron Age contexts, and not so much often in Somerset. So it was quite a nice one to have coming up there as well. So a couple more interesting finds from the Roman period. We've got this really nice bit of lead. So this is a lead ingot or a lead pig. Usually these were full-sized. You can see an example there on the top of what one would have looked like originally. This has obviously been probably beaten up by the plough. Maybe I think it was probably cut beforehand and then deposited, but it would have originally had some kind of inscription on the top there that may have given you an idea of who the emperor was at the time. Unfortunately, we can't see any of that, so we don't know exactly which period it dates to, which is why it's been given quite a broad date range. However, there was a lot of lead mining over in Somerset in the 1st and 2nd century, so the chances are that it dates to that period. And then on the right there, we've got a nice example of a small bracelet or an armlet. This is a plain example. You do get quite a lot with decoration on as well, but it's complete, so it's really nice to see. And these usually date to around the 3rd, 4th and 5th century. So some more personal adornment items here. We've got this nail cleaner. So on the left here, so these are identified as nail cleaners. I should have included an example image of how these are used, because I do think they're quite strange, but you can imagine the end with the pointy bits. You would have sort of hooked it under your nail to clean all the dirt from under your nail. It's got this really nice peacock design on it as well there. So peacock motifs are quite popular in the Roman period. And it would have had a loop on the end, so it would have been attached to maybe a belt or something like that. And then on the right there, we've got an example of a plate brooch. So this is a really beautiful example with lots of enamel remaining. So it would have obviously been quite a nice bronze gold colour at the time. And then it had this red and blue, maybe some yellow enamel in there as well. And this one dates to around 100 to 250 AD. So it's from the earlier end of the period. So we do see quite a lot of zoomorphic motifs in the Roman period. So on the left here, we've got an example of what we think is probably a furniture fitting. So I actually sent this to one of the experts at the British Museum for comment, because we didn't really know what it was and I couldn't find any parallels, but they decided it was some kind of furniture fitting. If anyone has any ideas of what they think it might be used for, please let me know. But basically it's got this lovely sort of, it's either dragon-esque, maybe dolphins, something like that, some kind of animal, double-headed animal motif there. And it's got the ring and dot design on it as well, which is classic of the 4th, 5th century style that you do see. So it kind of bridges the gap between the late Roman period and the early medieval period as well. And then on the right, we've got a really interesting key handle. So this has got a lion. You can just see him there with his head forward. So obviously the key itself is missing, but it would have been a really decorative piece. And I just thought that one was a really nice one to have. And that dates to around 43 to 100 AD. So now on to coins. We've got a couple of coins here. So the first one I've got here is a as of Claudius the First. So Claudius the First was a very unlikely emperor to his contemporaries. He was seen as a bit of a ditherer. He managed to escape all the purges of his predecessors, but he actually turned out to be one of the greatest emperors. He conquered he conquered Britain. And as such, we had a lot of these coins being issued because there was basically a shortage of small change. So you see a lot of these ases with the Minerva reverse. So that's actually, I don't know if you can make it out, but it's Minerva standing with a shield and spear. It was probably the most common design that was copied at this time. So it dates from around 41 to 54 AD. And that's a bronze coin as well. Likewise, on the right here, we've got this bronze coin, which is a sestertius of Lucilla. So Lucilla was the, oh, hang on, let me check my notes. Daughter of Marcus Aurelius, sister to Commodus. If you've seen the Gladiator films, you might recognize her. So the coins were struck for Lucilla following her marriage in AD 64. So she married Lucius Versus, who actually did die after a few years. So we only see coins for her from this period. But it's quite interesting. The reverse is a sort of a dutiful figure. We assume that's Lucilla, showing her feminine duties with she's pouring incense onto an altar there. So she was seen as this archetype of feminine, sort of the feminine role in Roman Britain or the Roman Empire, which is quite an interesting one. So, I mean, sadly, she was exiled. She was involved in a plot to kill her brother. So we only see coins of her from about the 5-year period here, and we hardly ever see any in Somerset. So it was a really nice one to have in such good condition as well. And then a couple more coins from the Roman period. So these are silver denarii. So denarii were struck from around 50 to 260 AD. So on the left, we've got a denarius of Lucius Aelius. So he was the adoptive emperor after Hadrian. However, he basically died too quickly. He was very ill. He was only Caesar under Hadrian, and then he didn't quite make it to full Augustus emperor before Hadrian died. So we only see a few of these coins, and they are struck with the legend Lucius Caesar there. So this coin is actually from AD 137, so it's very specific to that period. And he was, after his death, Hadrian then took on, let me just check my notes, Antoninus Pius. Yeah, so you get a lot of different names in that period, but he was supposed to take over. He then died. So when you do get coins for Lucius Aelius, it's quite interesting because they're basically struck in a 2-year period. So we don't really see them very often at all. And then on the right, we've got the this beautiful preserved denarius of Caracalla. So again, if you've seen the Gladiator movies, not to keep referencing things like that, but he is known in popular culture. He was quite a cruel emperor. He murdered his brother, who was his co-emperor, and then murdered all of his supporters as well. So he's someone who has been well remembered in history. And it's quite interesting that he chooses Jupiter on his reverse there as well. So they're generally used as quite a political tool, the coins. They chose who they wanted on their reverse to say something about them. So yeah, it's quite interesting. And that coin dates to 214 AD. And then we've got some early medieval coins as well. So as I said at the beginning, we don't actually see a lot of early medieval material. So this was really interesting to have these coins come up. So the silver penny on the left there, so these are all silver pennies. On the left, we've got Ethelred II. And so this is Ethelred the Unready, for any of you who already know more about him. So he was quite famous for the St. Brice's Day massacre, where he ordered the slaughter of a lot of Danes within England. This coin itself is dating from the furthest end of his reign, and is actually one of the few that we see in Somerset, minted by Ethelred. In the middle there, we've got a silver penny of Canute. So Canute was seen as one of the sort of the greatest Viking kings. So he was the king of Norway as well, and the king of Denmark. So this is sort of towards the end of his rule, and it's actually the first silver penny that we've had of Canute in Somerset. So that was really exciting. And then on the right, we've got a silver penny of Harold Harefoot. So that's Canute's son, his eldest son. This was a coin dated to 1036 to 1038. So this one is, I think, the only one we've got. Oh, so it's one of three examples of Harold Harefoot that we've had in Somerset as well. So they're all very, very rare coins we don't often see. So they're all really nice to have. And then moving on to some of our finds from the early medieval period. So these are some brooches that have come up. So these are really lovely decorative objects. You can see on the left there, we've got a anthropomorphic brooch. So it's actually got a style of somebody's face on there, looking quite stern, and it would have been gilded. You can see traces of the gilding remaining there. And on the right, we've got this enamel disc brooch. This is a really lovely piece with all the enamel remaining there. It dates to around 970 to 1000 AD. And it's a really lovely style. And it was actually featured in the current archaeology finds tray. So they obviously thought it was such a nice find. But it's, yes, really, really nice example. And a couple more objects from the early medieval period. We've got a couple of stirrup mounts. So usually we get these with different kinds of beasts on them. Very sort of typical of the early medieval period to have these sort of writhing beasts. So on the right there, you can see we're sort of looking down upon it. So we're looking down on something writhing. It's very hard to tell what exactly you're looking at, but you can make out the head at the top there at the pointy end, and there's possibly two heads as well at the lower end there. On the left, it's a bit clearer. So that's it's a face mask. So this is Odin's face, is the interpretation that's usually given. It's an interesting one because this is actually quite different to the usual types that you see. So usually the face is a lot smaller, a lot rounder. So this one was, at first I didn't know if it was actually a genuine or maybe a copy of that style, but it seems to just be a slightly different type with a larger face that is protruding quite a lot there as well. So these date to around the 11th century. And then moving on to some medieval finds. So we do get quite a lot of medieval finds. These were some of my favourites that we've had recently. So we've got this lovely little openwork buckle. So it's really beautiful condition. You've actually got all parts of it remaining there. So you've got the buckle shape itself with the pin, and then you've got the plates with the lion and the rivets remaining as well. So really, really nice example. There wasn't actually that many on the database at all. This was the first one that I'd recorded in Somerset. So that dates to around 1100 to 1300 AD. And then in the middle there, we've got this beautiful annular brooch. So you can just see it's got traces of enameling. Maybe it would have had some stone settings in there that they've been lost, but it would have been this lovely, really, really nice object before it was lost. And then we do get examples of pottery as well. So this is a piece of medieval courseware. You can just about see traces of decoration remaining on the sherd there. And it's quite a small piece. Maybe it would have been a cup or something like that. And that dates to roughly around 1000 to 1400 AD. And then post-medieval finds, we do get a lot of post-medieval finds. So these are some examples recently that came up, including this really interesting zoomorphic ring. So this was an interesting one because this style of ring with the coiled snake is seen from the Roman period all the way up to the Victorian period. So how do we date them then? Well, it's normally based on the patination, the feel of the object and how it's been made. So usually Roman objects have quite a chalky green, almost a pale bluey green patination to them, whereas this has this weird reddish patchiness to it, which usually indicates that it's a post-medieval object. And you can see that it's very well made. The style of it is probably just an imitation of a Roman ring. But it was a really nice one to have. Just showing this design of a coiled snake has been in use for a very long period of time. And then on the right here, we've got a gold angel of Richard III. So I'm not a big fan of medieval and post-medieval coinage, but I did like this one, not because it's gold, just because I think it looks really nice having, you've got St. Michael there spearing the dragon, and then the ship on the reverse. So it's just a really nice object, and it's actually been slightly misstruck as well. So it looks like it's been possibly double struck. You can just see, it looks like it's almost like you're trying to look at it through 3D glasses or something. There's just a bit of distortion to it there, which is an interesting part of its story as well. And then a couple further objects from the post-medieval period. We've got this little toy plate, which was really quite interesting. Dates quite late to the 18th to 19th century. And we also get cannonballs quite a lot as well. So cannonballs can be quite difficult to deal with because they're heavy, but they can be quite well dated based on the size, the weight of them, and also the material as well. So this one dated to around 1500 to 1700 AD. And then on to treasure. As I said, we do deal with treasure a lot as well. So this is just a quick run through of what the Treasure Act covers. So treasure is seen as anything that is over 300 years old. It's a minimum of 10% precious metal, so that's silver or gold. There are differences if you've got coins, however. So coins must be 2 or more if they're of precious metal that are found in the same hole or can be shown to be contemporary and perhaps disturbed by the plough. If you've got a copper alloy coin, you need to have 10 or more in the same hole or contemporary disturbed by the plough. It does get a bit complicated, but we deal with these all the time, and we have the backup of the treasure team at the British Museum as well. So if we're ever not sure if something is treasure, we always err on the side of caution. And we usually just check with the treasure team and see if there's any chance that it could be treasure. We also have the new rules that came in 2023. So this was just to avoid objects that would otherwise not be necessarily seen as treasure from being lost. So there was an example where we had a Roman style helmet that was made of copper. So it's a copper object, didn't count under the Treasure Act, but it was really significant. And it unfortunately went into a private collection. It has since been put on display, so it's all okay now, but it's just to avoid this sort of thing happening in future. So the new treasure reform now means that we include things that are regionally important, maybe has a connection to a particular person or an event. It's kind of done on a case-by-case basis. There haven't been, I think there's been one thing that's come through this new reform so far. So it is a very selective thing, and it hasn't increased our workload, but it just means it covers more chances of things being missed otherwise, and means that things can potentially go into museum collections. And again, this is just a real quick overview of the treasure process, because it can be a very long-winded process. But basically, once a finder has found something on a permission, they will report it to me as the finds liaison officer or the flow that's local to them. And then I deal with all the paperwork, report it to the coroner, and it goes through this whole process, which involves acquisition with a local museum, then going to be valued at the TVC, the Treasure Valuation Committee, There is also the possibility that a museum isn't interested in buying a find, and if that is the case, then it does get returned to the finder or the landowner. The whole process can take around a year, sometimes longer. It really depends, but you can see how there's all these different stages that things have to go through, which means that we really appreciate people's patience. And this is the liaison part of my role, is generally saying, "Oh, yes, I'll just check on that." And I do have to deal with hundreds of cases at a time, so it's a lot of stuff that we're doing, but it's really exciting, and you really never know what you're going to get. So speaking of, here's a couple of things that have gone through the treasure process recently. So this is an example of a piece of hack silver. So this is probably maybe once was a bracelet or something like that. It's been cut up to be used as currency in the early medieval period. So it dates from around 850 to 1000 AD. And then on the right here, we've got this lovely little annular brooch. So this is silver. Based on the style, the decoration, that indicated that it was a medieval object. So it dates to around 1250 to 1350 AD. And then a couple more here are, we've got this little silver gilt cap hook or cat hat pin. That's a bit of a mouthful. But you can see it's got this really lovely detail on it, really nice design there. And one of the main object types that we receive as treasure is rings. So we get signet rings, all sorts of things, posy rings. This is an example here as well, dating to around 15 to 1700 AD. So that's everything. I'm sorry it was a bit of a run through real quick there, and I did have to speed up at the end because I realised the time. But I hope that you've enjoyed it. And yeah, if you've got any questions, please let me know. And that's my email address is on there as well if anyone wants to get in touch. And if you want to find out more about PAS, you can go to finds.org.uk. Thank you.
Brilliant, Laura. Well done. What a lovely job you have. Get to go and see all this lovely treasure.
Well, you never know what you're going to get, so.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's a lot of hard work goes into trying to work out what it is, who it belongs to. How does it work with the Treasury Act then? If you do only specific things become treasure? I don't understand.
Yeah, so I did have to run through that quite quickly. There is a
Mm,
really good breakdown of it on the finds.org website. But
mm,
basically it's any object, so not a coin, any object that's over 300 years old, that's at least 10% gold or silver. So that would be brooches, rings, just
mm.
things like that. But then if it's coins, it's got to be two or more that have been deposited together. So you might have like a purse spill or a coin hoard. Um, if it's silver or gold, it's two or more, but if it's copper, it's 10 or more. So you have to make sure you know what else has been found in the field to be able to
Ah,
catch other potential objects, because obviously you've got ploughing and things like that, which can disturb context. So
yeah,
it's very much a see what else is coming up sort of thing. But
yeah.
yeah,
Lots of field walking and things like that, I
yeah.
suppose. Absolutely. So, at what point do they decide who gets ownership of the so-called treasure?
Um, so when someone's going to detect on land, they've got to have permission of the landowner. You've always got to have permission of the landowner.
Yeah,
Usually, so this is always between the finder and the landowner, but usually before they go out detecting, they will say, it's going to be this is mine, this is yours, or they'll come to some agreement before they actually start detecting.
yeah,
Um, the actual legal aspect is usually a 50-50 split if the find is acquired by a museum, because that means that there'll be a value placed on it and that will get paid 50-50. Sometimes people choose to waive their fee and just say, I'll donate it to the museum, which we really, really encourage.
yeah.
But yeah, usually it's about 50-50 split.
Oh, that's really interesting. How long ago were metal detectors actually invented? Because that must have
Oh, I don't
really
know.
well, because I mean all this what date did PAS start more or less?
Oh, it's the 90s. So the Treasure Act came in 96 and the PAS had been going a little bit before that.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's been a little while now.
I imagine in sort of early archaeology, there's a real panic about people finding things, but not bringing them to the eyes of the archaeologist. So you're simply just losing stuff all over the
Yeah.
place, and it's
Yeah,
a great
yeah,
pity.
precisely.
Yes, yeah. So it seems to work very, very well now, and I guess part of your job is being sort of the nice person that it's safe to come to.
Yeah,
Bring
that's the liaison side.
absolutely, it's
I've
all
got some
tricky
really
stuff.
lovely finders though. It is nice, and because I've been in post for a little while now, I start seeing the same people over and over, and you just build up a real nice relationship with the
Yeah,
community.
yeah, really good. And presumably there are little groups of metal detectors, the Metal Detectors Club. So, if you've been
Yes.
nice to them, they will presumably pass that information on.
Yeah, yeah. I've got
Yeah.
a really nice group in Yeovil that I deal with. I see them every few months, and it's just a real nice experience going and seeing them.
Oh, well done you for building up that relationship, because often that's the hardest bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So we've got some interesting questions coming through now, which is lovely. Um, what kind of colour do you know what they were using to colour those blue glass beads?
Oh,
Because I
I
know
don't know.
with pigments, was it like something like lapis lazuli that you would use in paint?
Probably. Yeah, I don't know the full details. I've only recorded
No,
a few of them, and it doesn't always involve me going into that much
no, I
research,
know. Yeah,
unfortunately. But yeah, I'm sure.
you can't be an expert in everything, can
Yeah.
you, really? Oh, lovely. Okay, we've got a question here. Have any of the finds being brought in led to having full archaeological digs?
Not so far when I've been in post. It's usually if a treasure find comes up that could have been from, say, a grave context or
Yeah,
something like that, which
yeah,
then will mean that we do an excavation. But the excavation has to be paid for, and unfortunately, budgets are normally very tight. So it usually means that unless something is really, really necessary, there isn't going to be an excavation.
yeah.
But like I say, that's just based here in Somerset. I'm not sure about other places.
Yeah, I don't understand how archaeology is funded now. Most of it seems to be by developers, so people wanting to build on the land usually have to pay
Yeah,
for the dig, don't they? Yeah,
yeah,
gone are the days when you could just go and dig any old place, really, and
yeah.
get money for it. Um, okay, so let's get down here. A few more coming through. Um, are you able to make a guess as to what proportion of the fines are reported to the PAS?
We do know this based on reports that have come out over the last few years. It's estimated only about 10% of fines are reported to PAS, which sounds really low.
Mm,
But a lot of us flows are incredibly overwhelmed with work. So to be honest, although it's a shame it's only 10%, I don't know how we'd cope. We wouldn't have capacity to do more than that. We do rely on volunteers, fines liaison assistants as well. There's a whole team of us in most places, so
oh,
we do end
really?
up working through a lot of material. But
Wow.
yeah, it's estimated around 10%.
So you actually have a team of people working with you as a few volunteers coming in to help?
I have one volunteer at the moment, but I've had numerous over the years. So and I have had an assistant as well, but he's now the Devon flow. So we're going to get a new one, a new assistant at some point.
Absolutely. It sounds like you need it.
Yeah.
I've got a question here, which is quite interesting. Am I right in thinking the B on the side of the angel that has a ship denotes that it was from the Bristol Mint?
Probably yes. I don't know every single
Good.
find, but yeah, I think that was probably right, considering some of them are we know now what the William coins that they do have E's and C's and that denotes the
Yeah,
mint. So yeah,
yeah,
probably.
yeah.
I'm a Roman coin girl really, so I'm not really as I
Are
said, I'm
you?
not, yeah, I'm not into the medieval, post-medieval stuff so
Oh,
much.
God. Oh, I don't know how you could.
I love Roman coins.
Oh, I like my post-medieval pot.
Oh, well, okay.
There's always plenty of that.
Yeah.
So, got a question here. The area around Cannington, Bridgewater has a lot of copper minerals, and a lot of copper coins have been found there, more than anywhere else in Somerset. Can do what you get? Does what what is handed in? Do you find that bears that out?
Um, to be honest, we don't actually have a lot of fines coming up from that area,
Yeah,
but that, like I say, it's usually just down to what permissions people have and the landowners as well. I do know there's been a lot of obviously Roman archaeology around that area.
yeah, there
But yeah,
is.
we
Yeah.
don't I don't have a huge amount coming up. It's normally South Somerset is where I tend to get most of our finds.
Yes. Well, the thing about Somerset is an incredibly rich county and has been for many years. I don't know why that would be. Perhaps there's just a lot of minerals to be found here, but certainly the Roman stuff is quite prolific, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, got another one here. Would the gold Saxon penny found on the Devon-Somerset border at Hemyock 2 or 3 years ago that sold for £250,000 qualify as treasure now? It was a single find, so did not qualify then, although only 7 others have ever been found. That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a really
Yeah,
interesting one. And to be
yeah,
honest, it's like I said, it's very much a case by case basis, and it is down to the treasure team to decide this, and they do a lot of research to determine these things.
yeah, I'm sure.
The coin that has gone through as treasure is the first coin that's been found that's the mint of Guthrum, who is I can't remember the Ethelred or something, but
Yeah.
Guthrum it's his coin, so it's currently going through the treasure process. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if that, but we can't go back on it, unfortunately. It doesn't work like
No,
that.
no, no. Oh, no,
But
I'm sure it
yeah, it's a
doesn't.
good question, and it is
Yeah,
very
of
much yeah case by case basis. So.
course. Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Well, that's been really lovely, Laura. I've really enjoyed it, and so nice to see some of those delightful little bits and pieces that come your way. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you
Okay,
for having me.
pleasure, absolute pleasure. So we have some more SANHS events coming up soon. Our next webinar will be with Tony Harding again, who will be giving his second talk about photographing old buildings. And that will be not till the 21st of May, because we have a thing called Easter in the middle. So right at the end of the next end of May, 21st of May, will be Tony talking again about photographing old buildings. This month, it's on the 28th of March, we've got the SANHS Annual Archaeology Day, and that will be at Stanton Drewstone Circles. So that, as always with the Annual Archaeology Day, is going to be a good day out, and I'll certainly be going there. If you need to go to that and you want to go, please get in touch with the SANHS office and let them know. Our associated societies, as always, are very busy. The Exmoor Society is busy on Friday, the 20th of March, so that's tomorrow, and they've got a tour and a three-course dinner. And on the 21st, the Froome Society for Local Study has a talk by Adrian Webb about Churchill's secret map makers, and that, of course, is a lecture all about his recent book that he's published. On the 24th, at Martock History Group, I've got a lecture by Joseph Rogers about tithe barns. And the 25th, Wednesday, Harptrees History Society have a talk about the mapping of Somerset by Kristin and Joe King. Again on the 25th, Tintinhole Local History Group have got to talk about In the Mood or Dancing Through the War by Dr. Francis Burrows. And I'm sure that will be a very interesting talk. And on Thursday, South Petherton Local History Group, The Archaeology of the Villa Ventorum by Rick Weeks of the Newt. So that's going to be another very interesting talk indeed. Details of all these events is on the SANHS website, so if you need to know a little bit more, do go and look there. And of course, all that remains for me is to say thank you to the webinar team, Nathanael, Allan and Tony, and thank you for joining us tonight. And don't forget, next webinar, 21st of May, to hear about Tony. All right, thank you very much.